Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of On the Record here on Out on That Line. I'm Alex, joined as always by my co-host Geoff. Geoff, how you doing tonight?
Doing fantastic. I'm tight. I'm right. I'm ready to rock. We're going to talk about D'Angelo and the seminal album. And yes, I said seminal. Voodoo. We decided to do this, obviously, because the world heard that D'Angelo has recently passed away at a young age. It was 54, something like that.
He was born in 74, so what does that make him?
Be 51, I think, then, right?
Just a baby.
Doing my math, yeah. So looked at as an absolute pioneer of what they call kind of the neo soul movement of the 90s. Lots and lots of artists, like, I think there's what would you say, like Tony Braxton, Sade did a lot of that. There's a lot of great artists that people have heard all over their radio. If they're in our age group, you heard artists like this all the time on like 107.1, all the time. Losing D'Angelo is a huge loss for music in general, specifically like the R&B genre.
Well, it's interesting because here we are again talking about an artist that definitely has not, like, conclusively has not been mentioned on the show before on any of our programming on the channel. Not because he wasn't like a hugely pivotal figure, but I think there are a lot of people who do sleep on his importance. I think a lot of people understand it. And then I think especially like younger generations who might look at something like Usher and be like, well, Usher's ancient. And D'Angelo had to walk so that Usher could fly, taking the neo soul into a more like pop kind of direction. But D'Angelo really his music served as a pivot point between your classic soul, which you think about like luminaries of that genre. You think of Teddy Pendergrass, you think of Isaac Hayes,
Marvin
Barry
Gaye.
White, Marvin Gaye. Yeah, you have like all these guys, like a genre typified by a lot of emotion. It's soul because you're literally putting your heart and soul in there, and that's the thing. This music is coming from inside of you. And then you have years later this other genre that comes out of that music, R&B. And D'Angelo really, more successfully than most, married the R&B sound with the sophistication of soul. Took, like, creating neo soul, making it a landmark album in that subgenre by taking soul and giving it this contemporary coat of paint, but then also taking some of the stuff, like if R&B relies on beats, then you instead get Questlove to play the drums on this album, and you have drums, and it makes the difference. It was around this time in the late 90s and the early 2000s where that made the difference. Music really was starting to become a lot more about, production and these production elements. So to use live instrumentation like this takes that inherent power of soul and takes the coolness and the style of R&B and marries them and elevates both and creates something incredibly unique, and we don't talk about it enough. So that's why we decided. I would have been happy with Brown Sugar, but Voodoo, I think you can argue even stronger for. I think it took what Brown Sugar did and pushes it forward even a little more. So I'm excited to talk about this one.
And I think the reason that I picked Voodoo over Brown Sugar because of that it has Untitled on there, and that is easily I think what D'Angelo is known most for, kind of in the zeitgeist of soul, R&B, neo soul, kind of what have you. The MTV generation, that was like right in the heat of things for the MTV generation. So he is, had since been pretty clear that he was not happy with the impact that the music video had for that song, because I think that stopped people from appreciating just how good of an artist he was. He only came out with what, 3 albums under
3.
his name. There was a whole lot of things. So it wasn't like an Enya situation where he just holed up and sequestered himself fully away forever. There were long breaks that he took, but he was consistently kind of participating in other people's projects. Had done a couple things with Raphael Sadiq, another person that's kind of looked at as this, certainly right now, I think, kind of carrying the torch for that neo soul movement, even though he's obviously getting longer in the tooth. I think he is somebody that's still producing music and still making original music. D'Angelo came out with Brown Sugar in, I think, 95, I want to say. That was revolutionary. That's really the album kind of credited with kicking off what people call neo soul. It is important in that he was so young. What was he, 18 or something like that? He was pretty young, right? What'd you
Yeah,
say?
he was, or I think he was
74?
like 21 or something like
21,
that.
yeah. So he was like very young when that came out, and he had I was reading he had participated in like some other musical groups from like through high school and kind of on up. He always was a musician. Like he was always, I guess, a pretty prodigious musical talent. Um, kind of reminded me a lot of Prince. Listening to
Hmm.
both Brown Sugar back in the day and Voodoo back in the day, and then obviously re-listening to Voodoo recently. Reminded me a lot of the same feelings as Prince. I think Prince went skewed obviously a lot more heavily into rock and roll and distorted guitars and kind of more just aggressive, kind of a punk element sometimes to some of his songs. But the feeling, I feel like they captured the same thing. When I listen to D'Angelo, I think of a song like Darling Nikki, and just that, just pure, you can feel how much they're feeling when they're singing it, and how much fun also they're having while they're doing it. Like a song like Chicken Grease on the Voodoo album.
Hmm.
There are so many serious, like very serious emotional moments on this album. And then you get a song like Chicken Grease.
Right.
And you're like, okay, this can be fun too. And he can do both. And the production quality on this album, I think, is really what has made it stand the test of time. You mentioned Usher being ancient, and there's a lot of, I don't know that I'd call Usher ancient yet, but
Well,
there's a
I
lot of
wouldn't. I'm
artists.
just
Yeah,
saying, Gen
I can
A.
see how young kids these days, now, if they want to call Usher ancient, I would counter with saying that D'Angelo is timeless. And
That's a good way of putting it.
I think for me, I hear Marvin Gaye, I hear all of these great, I hear some James Brown, especially in the really kind of jazzier elements of the music, those like really hard snare hits, those like hard stops before they kind of jump into the next verse or the next chorus or whatever it is. You hear those same elements, and I don't know if it was intentional that he was like intentionally taking in those influences and using them, or that was just how he was hearing these songs needed to get made, and those guys had nothing to do with it. But I could not help but hear it the same way he would slip into that falsetto just kind of out of nowhere, same way Marvin Gaye used to do it.
Hmm.
So I find it hard to believe that there was no influence by any of those guys on his stuff here. But the way that it just is so clearly D'Angelo, and it is so clearly his, and it's the combination of that classic soul, that classic element that you were talking about, and marrying it with that very like kind of New York hip hop beat sound. It sound, and then you get Method Man and Redman on this album too, and it just like hammers that point home even more. Just it's, I feel like at 13 years old when this album came out, I couldn't possibly appreciate it the way that I do now. But I remember in college getting back into this album. I remember like as the years have gone by, every couple of years you just kind of happen across something, you're like, oh yeah, I'll give this a listen, or like Untitled pops up in a playlist and you're like, oh, let me go back and listen to the rest of this. And
Or like,
it
yeah,
just,
sorry.
you're reminded how pivotal this is, that if you're going to talk about neo soul, like this is the album to talk about with it.
Well, and it's funny, like you're right when you say it's timeless and it crops up at times where you least expect it. I remember very vividly being at your house years ago, before we moved to Texas, years ago, and Belly came on TV, and it was the scene with Devil's Pie, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I forget how good this song is, and it makes you
Mm-hmm.
go back and you sit with Voodoo, and then you sit with Brown Sugar, And it has that timeless quality where I think part of the timelessness comes from just how organic it is. Like I said before, he was like, it might be kind of corny to be like, it's a musician's musician,
Hmm.
but he came from a family of musicians and prioritized live instrumentation, analog recording over digital, performing the multiple instruments himself, lots of
Hmm.
tracking, not putting a hat on a hat. Like I think the difference between D'Angelo and Prince kind of loved to be in the studio and put these different elements together for better or worse.
Hmm.
Sometimes you get like absolutely genius material, and then sometimes you get some of the stuff he was making
In the
in the
90s.
late 90s.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know. But I really think for me it's the emotional depth, the things that he's singing about and the way he's singing about them, and letting these ideas breathe over live instrumentation, working with talented musicians, doing multiple things himself, and prioritizing groove and improvisation and doing very like idiosyncratic things with the beat, especially like
Hmm.
the beat's a little behind, the beat's a little ahead, but it's not in a jarring like math rock Frank Zappa type way.
Hmm.
It always felt, and it's not even conversational. It has more urgency and more intimacy than a conversation. It's hard to define other than by the way that it makes you feel.
Hmm.
So it's like meticulously produced, and there's like an ultra fidelity to the soul sound, the jazz and R&B sound, and elevating it for the modern time, and it lasts through to today. So again, I really like when you're like, D'Angelo is timeless. This music is timeless. Voodoo is timeless because it's absolutely true. You never listen to it and it never feels dated in some of the ways that new metal, or if you want like a more analogous genre, like some of the rap and hip hop that came out of this
Hmm.
time period, you listen to it and it's like, woof.
Hmm.
Like very compressed, overproduced, kind of one-dimensional stuff in a lot of cases, and you were never gonna run into that problem with D'Angelo. It was
Hmm.
all feeling, it was all authenticity right from dead center, which makes it one of the more enjoyable listens you can go back to anytime.
Yeah. And you mentioned the production. My friend, this album on headphones with the
Oh, Lossless
lossless.
on Spotify.
Oh, buddy. That
Mm,
was, I mean, so, not to brag, but I have Bose speakers in my Mazda CX-5. No big deal.
must be nice.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet ride if I do say so myself. Um, it sounds great in there, right? It sounds awesome. Like this album, you can tell immediately it's extremely well produced. Like they knew what they were doing when they were putting this together. He clearly had a vision and made sure that those standards were upheld throughout the whole thing. But when you put on a pair of headphones and you're listening through a device that can provide you with the full spectrum of sounds available to you on this album, my friend, it is going to be a wild experience for you, a wild and enlightening experience. The way that they took advantage of stereo sound and would pan it back and forth, especially
Phenomenal.
on the One Mogin and the Root. In the middle of those songs, just all of a sudden feels like I'm listening to Pink Floyd or something like that. I mean, just really, really incredible moments on this album. Now, my one criticism will be that I don't think any of these songs really needed to be as long as they are. I think would be my one criticism of this. I think every single one of them clocked in at 6 plus,
Yeah, they
pretty
were
much.
all pretty damn long. The album is like an hour and 18 minutes or something like
Yeah,
that.
like and the thing is, when you are able to just sit with that and just listen to it and just let it and just experience it, just kind of let it go, it's worth every bit of those hour and 18 minutes. What I found is listening to it, we talked about doing it 2 weeks ago, so I think I've like 5 or 6 times I listened
Hmm.
through this album in various media formats, I suppose. um it's just when you've heard it a few times in a row, they just get a little bit long. That's really the only criticism I could possibly find about this album. When I was picking out my favorite songs on this album, I had to really I ended up I had written down 5 already, and I was like looking for more to write down. I'm like, there's only like 12 or 13 songs on this album. Like, slow your roll if you're going to be picking out favorites. Otherwise, there's no point in picking out favorites. You're just picking out your least favorites because there's going to be fewer of those. So I narrowed it down. I don't know how many of this is going to match up with you, or if you even considered just writing specific songs down that you liked.
I did. So yeah, you
So
bang
for
this
me,
dog. I'll hold the head.
Devil's Pie,
Yep.
Left and Right,
Mm-hmm.
Chicken Grease,
Mm-hmm.
One Mo Gin,
Mm-hmm.
and The Root.
Yes, and I think I honestly I took notes on everything because I had a hard time paring it down. Obviously, Untitled goes on the pile for me. I know that there is kind of that controversy surrounding the music video and kind of his feelings on it. Like, the intense success of the album gave him a ton of anxiety, but then like the music video as well, and like those associations, I know it kind of made things difficult for him. But like as a sensual minimalist ballad, woo boy. So we don't have to start there. We can start at another one of your favorites. But I would like to kind of
We can talk.
the
Yes, we
tracks.
can dig in on Untitled, because I think that's something we should expound on a little bit more, because that song in particular, other than it being basically the best known song that he's done, that song in particular, I think, is a defining moment that he would probably consider in a somewhat bad way. I think grateful for the success. I don't think that was ever in question. I don't think he was ever somebody that would act like he wasn't thankful for, getting a paycheck for doing what he loved doing. But I think the idea that it made him a sex symbol, and that became, and again, I don't know that he would have minded being known as a sex symbol if that wasn't the only thing that people seemed to know him as.
Right.
So I think the idea that he felt like he was very pigeonholed into that character, and when people would go to the shows, that's what they would expect him to act like. And I think there was obviously a lot of sensuality in other songs, and a lot, like, that's not like he only put it in that song and it was nowhere present anywhere else. So it's not like that wasn't the intention behind him making these songs, was to kind of have a little bit of that reaction. But I think the idea that he now felt like he owed somebody something, or because they expected him to be a certain way, and they were paying for a concert ticket, that maybe I should act a certain way, if that's what they think I should do, and I think that's likely to mess with anybody's head.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And it depends on where you fall in the album and on the songs in there, how strong you also think the song is absent the music video. Like, if we didn't all remember Untitled, How Does It Feel? I just call it How Does It Feel? If we all didn't immediately go like, oh yeah, because of the music video, would you consider it a standout track? I notice you didn't put it on your cuts. And it
So
makes mine, but
I knew that we were going to talk about it, so I feel like I didn't need to put it. Those are the ones that I wanted to make sure that we talked about.
yeah.
But I think the way that Untitled builds, because I can't remember if I saw the music video first or if I heard the song first, but I've listened to it outside of the music video a million times. So I love the song. And the thing is, the way that song builds is what I love about music, like that kind of build up and a payoff. And you just feel all the instruments, because you start out very sparse, it's very minimalist, just like you said. But then you just get these little bits as you go along. It's like I get when I hear it, it's like he's the Pied Piper, and he's like walking along, and all these instruments are now jumping in to kind of join the song. And when it builds to him hitting that falsetto note, and you just really hear those backing vocals and that snare really start hitting, just there are moments in music that I think, if I could bottle them when an alien race showed up and try to be like, okay, this is what we're about. Like those kind of moments are what I look for.
Yeah, 100%. And like if you want something of the same flavor that does something wildly, or something of the same structure that's a different flavor, and you want another 7.5 minute song that
Yeah.
just like builds to a crescendo and gets and changes along the way, and is kind of a vocal showcase too, and a songwriting showcase, you do Jeff Buckley, Lover You Should Have Come Over. I
Hmm.
love that song because the way it starts, if you didn't know how long it was, and you hear it, you're like, all right, we're gonna be in and out in 3 minutes at the
Hmm.
most. And I kind of have an understanding of what we're gonna get here. But strap in because it's gonna change like 9 times and it's gonna go completely off the rails. And Untitled is like a little more disciplined. Um, but it's just as sparse. Like what is there? Bass, electric piano, very, very subtle percussion,
Hmm.
mostly being a vocal showcase. It's very focused, minimal overdubs. It makes it feel more intimate. It makes it just feel like this very, very subtle experience. But what's not like what's musically subtle about it is not thematically subtle about it. You know,
Hmm.
you talk about like going back into the soul tradition. Eddie Murphy's got like the joke about I forget who he says it first. I think it was maybe like Barry White or Marvin Gaye, kind of like, "Oh, come on over," and then Teddy Pendergrass is like, you got what I need." Like,
Yeah.
um, there was like a big urgency and a big like, as much as the soul singers of that era could kind of draw you in, like Teddy Pendergrass could do "Close the Door." I love
Hmm.
that fucking song. Very, very powerful and intimate. But the builds come earlier, and it's a little bigger, and Teddy's kind of showing off in less time.
Hmm.
D'Angelo in this takes his time and just kind of traps you in that honey and brings you to a full and worthy climax. So I'm glad we're talking about it first, not to say get it out of the way, like bang, get it out of the way, but I
Hmm.
think at the risk of kind of fulfilling the prophecy in a way that I think would have bothered him, we're paying homage to like a cultural moment. What is the sound of every woman in America soaking her socks? It's this song. So I mean, come on. You have to talk about it and give it its due, but that's again one of the testaments to Voodoo is you can keep
Hmm.
digging into this, and how does it feel is not even the main event. It's not
No.
even the main course. There's so much more.
Yeah. There's so I really liked so Left and Right. One, it grabs my attention because I love Method Man and Redman. I think they are one of the finest rap duos that have ever graced our airwaves and that have ever graced our screens. Do
Amen.
recommend watching How High. Fantastic, fantastic movie.
I figure study high, take the test high, get high
Get high
scores.
scores. Yeah, just phenomenal, phenomenal movie. The so Left and Right is great, but I think that is not one so much that I'm like a D'Angelo song because that the star of the show for me is obviously Method Man and Redman. But we can talk about Devil's Pie because that song is on this album. So like Devil's Playa Playa, I feel like it's a fully formed song on its own, sure, but I feel like it really is just the intro to this
Mhm,
album.
mhm.
It's very subdued in its in how vocal like his the volume of his vocals, it's very much a if you're going to call any part of this album conversational instead of him telling us something, like play would be that would be the conversational side where he's just like kind of on the side telling you something. But then you get into Devil's Pie.
Mhm.
And that's when you feel that like that bounce. You know what I mean? And that's one thing that this album has in spades. It's got a very New York sound to me, especially with the kind of beats they do, but it has a very like southern bounce to it. The same way like Outcast songs would have that kind of bounce to them. Or, people like UGK out of Houston that would have that bounce to it. And this album just had so much of it. Devil's Pie starts out. I feel like if you are going to give somebody, if it's not going to be Untitled from this album, to give somebody like this is what D'Angelo is to me, Devil's Pie has got to be it.
Yeah, and it's So yeah, Playa gives you that that kind of introduction to what you can expect in terms of like especially the grooves and what you can expect from like the rhythmic, like the polyrhythms and stuff like that. It sets the table so that then you can get into Devil's Pie, which is going to kind of add like a layer of funk onto it. It's like the funkiest satire you're ever gonna hear,
Hmm.
and it's very throwbacky. It has like a kind of a 70s groove to it, like the funk inspired bass line,
Hmm.
the wah wah on the guitar, these like very interesting rhythmic shifts that are punctuated by these kind of like brass flourishes, and you get little sounds like this. I can't even like
Hmm.
approximated it so high, and I don't really know what instrument is doing that. It's just these little production pieces where he doesn't pull those out of the bag all the time. So you get one in this, and it has this kind of otherworldly quality to it. Um, Groovy, emphasis on the beats, and great social commentary,
Hmm.
critiquing excess, materialism, deal with the devil, slice of the devil's pie,
Hmm.
keeping it funky. And I think sounds unlike there are a lot of tracks that sound similar, and it's not to be like, well, it's kind of a like homogenous album. But I think this is one standout amongst a handful of standouts that are noticeably different from what you would otherwise think is maybe like a long composition or a symphony, or in the I don't know what they call Handel. I should know what Handel's The Messiah is. I don't. It's not a symphony. It's a something or other. Whatever the fuck
A
Handel's
concerto,
Messiah. A concerto, sure. Like
an aria,
yeah,
uh,
a
bolero.
recitative. Yes.
Yeah,
But
I'm
it
just
it
thinking of
it
the things they call different songs in Ocarina of Time.
Yeah,
Zelda.
there you go.
Yeah.
This song is an ocarina of time in many ways. But it all we love to talk about how albums like the unity of sound and like one large movement and when things deviate. And this is one of those moments, and it comes right off the top. It keeps you on your toes.
Hmm.
And just kind of it's that musician's musician thing where it's like, well, we're gonna try this. And then eventually we're gonna do left and right, and we're gonna throw these incredible rappers into it. So I think, yeah, like you said, if you were to throw devil's pie at someone to get their feet wet, you'll entice them to come in and stay for some of these other
Hmm.
long, perhaps more soulful songs.
Yes. And where so my next one that I was going to want to talk about is chicken grease. I don't know if any of the three between Devil's Pie and It were ones you wanted to discuss
Um, no, I'm good with following yours because, like I said, I kind of wrote notes for
on everything.
everything.
Okay. Okay. Well, my next one is going to be chicken grease. Now, this is to me, it reminds me of like just summer. It reminds me of like just good times. Like you just think of a time when you felt like you were in community, you felt like you had support, you felt like everybody was just there to have fun. There were not these same problems we were dealing with in the world right now. um it to me, having a song called Chicken Grease on the same album as Untitled, and an album that is as sophisticated a soul record as it is, and he still is going to have a song called and about chicken grease. I love it.
Well, yeah, and like you said, the community aspects of it are, I think, what really kind of shines through. I mean, you get lines like, "Uh-oh, to get to the other side, y'all cross the road, but not the kids. See, I'm like that old bucket of Crisco that's sitting on top of the stove. Simmer to a sizzle like the days of old." It's sprinkling in imagery and metaphor for things other like it's using the community imagery and the community metaphor to kind of draw you a
Mhm.
picture of a place at a time that clearly like influenced all this other music that we're hearing. Like, who do you think played him the music that influenced him? Again, coming from a musical family, so you get these snippets in this song of it's kind of a wink and a nod to the things that he grew up with that would influence this album.
Mhm.
So, and it's a very interesting, it's one of those standout songs. It's kind of a change of pace, but yeah, and positioned interestingly in the context of the
Mhm.
album. You love moments like that. Like the royal you, like any like music lovers, you have to
Mhm.
love these little digressions and these little switch ups here. So again, it's one of those features of the album that makes it that much stronger when you allow yourself to take this little diversion into a song like Chicken Grease.
Mhm. I really the next two I kind of liked for the same reasons. Is One More Again and The Root. And for me, it was these were the two like standout production songs on the album. On an album full of like excellently produced songs, like these two were the ones where really had the moments that I noticed, I guess is the way to put it. So it was that the intentional like panning of left to right on the stereo speakers. You know, there were so many intentional, that's what made me realize like how intentional everything is on this album musically. These two songs, because if you're going to do something like that, it's because you really want that effect. Like that's not easy to do, and no one would notice if it wasn't there. Like no one would listen to these songs and think, "Oh, I wish it had the panning effect at this particular moment." But it's the sort of thing you hear and you're really glad it's there. And I feel like that's what he is so good at. And it's the avoidance of, as you say, like putting a hat on a hat. It's putting the right thing in the right place. And he just seems to do that so consistently. And he does it as good as any time on this album on these two songs for me.
And I would say that those two stand in like excellent contrast to one of the songs that like really stands out to me, Great Day into Morning /
Mm-hmm.
Booty. Funk driven, it's a jam until the end of time. And what it is it's kind of celebrating the live collaborative musicianship, getting Questlove doing these like weird syncopations with the drums, and Pino Palladino's got this like great fluid bass that's kind of anchoring the groove. These long extended instrumental sections where it's like I invited my friends to, help me execute this vision, certainly, but now this is an instance where we're going to kind of play. So if we can focus on production in other songs and we can focus on our polish, this is a moment where I'm going to kind of, my vocals on this are really going to be kind of like ad libs and improv, and I'm going to use that as an opportunity to take a step back and let my collaborators shine, because they help make this thing what it is, and they really, really do. Like you can tell Questlove drumming, you can tell those hits,
Mm-hmm.
and it it's hard to imagine it any other way. You get any other kind of like session musician, or God forbid you do beats, which I don't think ever would have occurred to him. This, having live instrumentation and
Mm-hmm.
this much care going into it, makes all the difference, contributes to that timeless quality. And so it's great to have a juxtaposition between these like testaments to great production and then these testaments to live musicianship and
Mm-hmm.
collaboration. You truly can have it all, you
Yeah,
know?
I feel like D'Angelo with this album, and certainly with the other two, I feel like he just put himself on such a pedestal of what is possible. You know, like you can provide excellence. It doesn't have to be consistent. You can provide it when it becomes available to you, which is kind of what he did. You know, I loved I read a quote by him in my research that, they were asking why it took 5 years between, because something as successful as Brown Sugar, most record labels are going to be like, get something out next year. Like, give us another reason to tour and sell more t-shirts. Like most companies are going to do that. And so he had a quote where, he's talking about he would suffer from writer's block. And he would say, I write this, the songs come from living. So like songs don't, we can't just force them out. Like they don't work that way. You have to go out and live, and you'll get the songs. And I like that quote because it meant the art meant more to him than the commercial success of it. And I think it's a noble venture, and I certainly don't begrudge anybody that sells out to feed themselves or their families. I don't begrudge anybody of that, but it is nice to see when somebody doesn't do that and finds the success anyway, because the talent is just so prodigious that it can't be ignored.
Well, and if you are the kind of person that say what you want about him for better or worse, but like Zach Bryan, fills up like a notebook a day.
Mm-hmm.
You have some people, it just comes to you and comes easily, and you can argue like how quality is their stuff. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
Zach Bryan's a bad songwriter. This isn't me trying to shit on him.
Yeah.
But, sometimes bad songwriters can poop out a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes great songwriters are consistently inspired and always working. And then in other cases, it takes a while to come out with your next thing. It was
Mm-hmm.
14 years between Voodoo and what's the third one called? Is it Black Messiah?
I
I
think
always
so.
forget the
Yeah.
the lost third album. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Black Messiah. So like
Yeah.
there's 14-year gap between those. And it is at that point knowing what you want to say and taking the time to say it, yes, is more important than the commercial success if you're in this for the right reasons,
Mm-hmm.
which the song's the thing. And when I look at this album and like my key takeaways, like in my notes, the things that I wrote down, I try to synthesize like, well, what do you love about it? What makes it stand out? What do you love about it? And I couldn't come up with just one thing because you have, what do I love? The polyrhythms and the grooves. You've got the tracks pushing and pulling these beats around. You've got live and analog instrumentation. You're relying on your skilled musicians. You're not
Mm-hmm.
going into the production elements. Vocal experimentation, going all over the place, exploring his range, fusion of all the genres, soul, funk, jazz, gospel, hip hop. It's all sort of a cosmic gumbo. Thematic cohesion, this very like intimate expression and satirical elements and social commentary and like emotional vulnerability, and then like the studio as an instrument, like you're emphasizing the recording process. You've got all these great live musicians, you yourself are playing all these different
Mm-hmm.
things. There are so many elements about it that put it head and shoulders over some of these like that put D'Angelo as an artist head and shoulders over some people who are far more or were far more prolific.
Mm-hmm.
But there wasn't this much attention to detail, and there wasn't this much self-confidence for an anxious guy who was sort of startled by his own success and was a somewhat troubled guy. You'd kind of never know it through the music. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much identity and confidence and attitude in this music. We'll come back to what you said at the beginning because I 100% co-sign it. Timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Voodoo is a timeless album. D'Angelo is a timeless musician, and I'm sorry that he's gone. But having left us with this body of work of this kind of quality, you can take that forward in the future with you and treasure it forever.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of shit like Voodoo and
Yeah.
not a lot of shit like D'Angelo.
Yeah, he's really incredible. I have a trivia question for you, Alex, and you may have found this answer as you were kind of searching through things, but
Okay, maybe.
do you know what the one of the last commercial like songs he released was for?
Nope, couldn't tell you.
A song called Unshaken for the Red Dead Redemption 2 video game.
Whoa, well, not being a gamer, I wouldn't have got that, and it didn't pop
Yep.
up in some of
And
my readings.
I
So.
remember that moment. It's a particular scene where you are like some bad shit just went down and you're just heading back home.
And there's a guy shirtless in his underwear staring at you from the wood.
But it's a very good song, and he wrote it specifically for that game
Hell yeah.
because
Well,
apparently he loved the first Red Dead Redemption, and I guess told Rockstar, who made that game, that he wanted to do a song when he heard about Red Dead Redemption 2. It's like, I want to do a song for it.
oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And it reminds me too, I think of someone who's kind of on a similar trajectory would be Frank Ocean. We haven't
Mhm.
gotten anything since Blonde, and I can't even remember when Blonde came out.
It was at least a decade ago, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, I think D'Angelo inspired a lot of artists in a lot of different ways.
Mhm.
And someone like Frank Ocean kind of carried that same musicianship and attention to detail forward. And it's just kind of nice that, yeah, I'm not a gamer, but you wouldn't expect like a little D'Angelo treat to be
Mhm.
sprinkled in there. So it's just nice to see like the influence
Yeah.
continue to ripple through the culture.
Yeah. And it's hopefully it's somebody that people just don't forget. Hugely influential, hugely important to music in general. I think he's going to be missed a lot. I don't know that there was ever going to be another album or anything like that. I don't know what stage he was at with wanting to do more with his music, but what he did do is some of the best we've ever heard. So, on that note, folks, we appreciate you being here with us. We do recommend go listen to Voodoo, go listen to Brown Sugar, go listen to Black Messiah, go play the entire campaign of Red Dead Redemption 2 just to hear the D'Angelo song. It is worth it. I promise. Alex, did you want to take us home on this one?
I would love to take us home because you and I, we flip flop roles on the record here.
Mm-hmm.
So don't forget, if you haven't already and you got this far, you got to subscribe to the channel, click the bell so you never miss a video from us, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment. And with all that said, we'll see you next time.